When pride meets reality, Daniel always believed he deserved more. More recognition, more adventure, more freedom. During the last years of his marriage to Clara, he felt that life had become too small for his ambitions. She was dedicated, hardworking, but in his eyes, too conventional. He wanted to shine, to be envied, to live intensely. When he asked for the divorce, he made it seem like he was freeing himself from invisible chains. Clara simply nodded, with that calmness he never knew how to interpret. The first months after the separation were an explosion of euphoria for Daniel. He traded his car for an imported model, red and gleaming. He began frequenting restaurants he once considered too expensive, ordering wines whose names he could barely pronounce. His social media transformed into a portfolio of achievements. Beach, mountains, nights out at sophisticated bars. Each post was accompanied by captions calculated to impress. He wanted everyone to know he was living his best moment. The validation came quickly. Likes, comments, messages from old friends praising his new life. Daniel felt he had finally gotten it right. He had left behind the monotonous routine and found his true self. In his thoughts, he imagined Clara seeing his photos, perhaps with a bit of regret. He never admitted it out loud, but part of that ostentation was directed at her. He wanted her to know how well he was doing without her. Clara, however, disappeared from social media soon after the divorce. Her profile remained active, but silent. No photos, no status updates, no sign of how she was living her life. Daniel noticed this with certain frustration. How could she simply vanish? He expected some reaction, some indication that she missed him or, at least, curiosity about his new routine. Her silence was irritating because it gave him no fuel for his narrative of overcoming. 6 months passed. Daniel maintained the frenetic pace of his remodeled life, but something was beginning to crack beneath the surface. The trips, however photogenic they were, had started to seem empty. The dinners alone at tables in expensive restaurants lost their flavor after the second drink. The people who now surrounded him were superficial, attracted by the shine, not the essence. He wouldn't admit it, but he was beginning to feel a loneliness that no post could fill. It was on a Friday night, leaving one of the city's most exclusive restaurants, that everything changed. Daniel was satisfied with himself, having just posted a photo of the main course with a caption about, "Living the life you deserve." He was adjusting his coat when he stopped in the middle of the sidewalk. There, just a few meters away, was Clara. She was getting out of a black car, discreet but clearly luxurious. And beside her, a tall man in an impeccable suit held her hand naturally. Daniel froze. It wasn't just Clara's presence that shocked him, but the transformation in her. She wore an elegant dress, simple but sophisticated, and her hair was different, shorter, modern. But what impacted him most was the expression on her face. Calm, serene, genuinely happy. She smiled while talking to the man, and there was a lightness in her gestures that Daniel didn't remember seeing in the last years of marriage. It was as if she had become an improved version of herself. The man beside her was different from everything Daniel expected. He didn't flaunt, didn't speak loudly, didn't try to draw attention. But his presence was magnetic. There was a quiet confidence in the way he moved, how he lightly touched Clara's back while guiding her to the restaurant entrance. Daniel recognized the face. It was Eduardo Mendez, a discreet billionaire known for his strategic investments and philanthropy. His public appearances were rare, but his name carried weight. Daniel felt his stomach turn. Of all people, a billionaire. And not just anyone, but someone whose fortune and influence made Daniel's red car look like a toy. Worse still, Eduardo didn't need to prove anything to anyone. He existed on another plane, where ostentation was unnecessary because power was intrinsic. And Clara was beside him, not as a trophy but as an equal. The way he looked at her made that clear. For a brief second, Clara's eyes met Daniel's. She recognized him. There was no drama, no discomfort. She simply waved discreetly, a gentle smile on her lips, before entering the restaurant with Eduardo. It was a simple gesture, almost casual. But for Daniel it was devastating. There was no resentment in that look, no triumph. Just cordial indifference. As if he were part of a distant past she had already completely overcome. Daniel stood there, unable to move. People passed by him, but he saw nothing. His mind spun in circles. How had this happened? When Clara had never posted anything, never given signs. While he screamed his happiness to the world, she simply lived hers. And now, the reality was undeniable. She had moved on in a way he had never imagined possible. In the following weeks, Daniel tried to investigate discreetly. Mutual friends mentioned that Clara had returned to school after the divorce, completing a master's degree she had always postponed. She had also started working as a consultant, and it was at one of these professional events that she met Eduardo. It wasn't an instant fairy tale, but a genuine connection between two mature people. Eduardo valued her intelligence, her worldview, her quiet strength. Things Daniel had never really seen. Every detail Daniel discovered was like a stab to his ego. He realized that while he was busy posting photos and collecting likes, Clara was building something real. She didn't need to prove anything to anyone because she was genuinely investing in herself. The irony was bitter. He had left the marriage believing she was holding him back, when in fact it was he who couldn't see the value of what he had. Daniel stopped posting on social media. He simply couldn't anymore. Each photo now seemed like a lie, a desperate facade of happiness. He looked at his own images and saw the emptiness behind the forced smiles. The external validation that once fed him now nauseated him. He realized he was exhausted from pretending, from constantly trying to prove he had made the right decision. Because deep down he was beginning to doubt. The nights became long and introspective. Daniel replayed moments from the marriage that he once considered tedious and now realized were precious. The quiet mornings with coffee and newspaper. The conversations about nothing and everything. The way Clara always supported him even when he didn't reciprocate. She never asked him to be spectacular, just to be present. And he had wasted it all chasing a fantasy version of success that now revealed itself to be hollow. He tried dating other women, but each encounter ended with the same feeling of emptiness. None of them was Clara. None had that depth, that capacity to genuinely care. Daniel realized too late that he had confused stability with boredom, and partnership with limitation. Clara never stopped him from growing. He simply never knew how to grow alongside her. 3 months after the restaurant encounter, Daniel saw a news item on a business website. Eduardo Mendez had announced a new social impact project, and Clara was listed as Director of Sustainability for the initiative. There was a photo of them both at an event, and again what hurt most was the visible authenticity. It wasn't staged. It was real life with purpose and meaning. Clara had found not just a new love but a new path. Daniel closed his laptop and looked around his modern, empty apartment. The white walls, the designer furniture, everything seemed sterile. There were no memories there, just objects. He had traded a home for an Instagram-worthy space. He had traded a partner for an audience. And now, the audience no longer applauded, and he was alone with the truth he had so avoided. He hadn't freed himself in the divorce. He had lost himself. The ostentation was his way of screaming to the world that he was fine, but now he realized it was just a scream into the void. Clara didn't need to scream because she was genuinely fine. She didn't need to prove her happiness because she was truly living it. While Daniel built a facade, she built a life. The difference was abysmal and, finally, impossible to ignore. On a particularly difficult night, Daniel picked up his phone and typed a message to Clara. "I hope you're happy. You deserve it." He stared at the words for long minutes before deleting everything. It wasn't the moment. Maybe it never would be. Clara didn't need his belated words. She had already found her peace without him, beyond him. And he needed to find his, not through posts or external validations, but by looking within. Daniel deactivated his social media that night. Not in a dramatic gesture, but in a silent acceptance. He needed to stop living for others and start living for himself, truly. He didn't know where to begin, but he knew he couldn't continue in the direction he was going. The image of Clara and Eduardo that night remained etched in his mind, not as punishment, but as a revealing mirror. He had lost more than he imagined when he signed the divorce papers. He didn't just lose a wife but a partner, a confidant, a person who truly cared. And worse, he had lost precious time trying to be someone he wasn't, chasing empty applause while real life happened in silence. Clara found her greatness in discretion. Daniel remained trapped in the illusion of shine. While looking through the window of his empty apartment, Daniel finally understood. Ostentation is for those who need to convince others. Fulfillment is for those who truly live. And he, in his desperate search for more, had let slip away what really mattered. The last image he would carry with him was that one. Clara walking confidently, Eduardo by her side, entering that restaurant as if they belonged there. Not because of money, not because of status, but because they had found something genuine amid the chaos of the world. Daniel had had that once. And now, alone with his shattered ego, he would need to learn to live with the consequences of his choices. Life, he discovered too late, waits for no one. And true success doesn't come with filters.